Morning campers, or if you're scouts it might be the afternoon. In fact, if you're anything like my scouts, it might be almost tea time when you're finally emerging from your dens or your tents that you've been sleeping in this weekend. I am going to talk you through how to make eggy bread. Now, we call eggy bread on camp. We eat a lot of it, I have to say, in Bridge of Allen, but it's not always known by that name. Some people call it French toast. Now, the reason that it is called French toast is because it arrived in America from Europe and there was a perception that it had come from France. And in actual fact, they do eat it in France. They eat it as a dessert in France, and they call it lost bread because they use stale bread to make it. So there's your first interesting fact for the day. Anyway, we're not going to use stale bread. We are using some lovely fresh granary bread, but you can use white bread, brown bread, doesn't matter, whatever you prefer. That's the first ingredient that you're going to need. You'll also need some lovely eggs. I have a whole box of them because there are 4 of us in this house and I might be making quite a lot of eggy bread. You need roughly 2 eggs per person, assuming that you're going to be having 2 bits of bread per person. You also need some butter. This is just for greasing the pan that you're going to fry the eggy bread in. And then you'll need your toppings that you might want to put on. I quite like icing sugar. My children like to have maple syrup, anything that's naughty and minxy, but you could have bacon, you could have savoury eggy bread, you could have cheese. You also need a little bit of milk, sorry I forgot that, just to make the egg mixture a little bit more liquidy before you soak your bread in it. Now in terms of equipment, obviously you need a frying pan, which I have on the stove over there. You need something to mix your eggs in, to beat your eggs and milk in. I like to crack each egg individually into a bowl, small bowl or a cup, in case any of them are off. It means you're not spoiling all the ingredients. However, I have discovered that it's quite difficult to dip an entire slice of bread in a bowl of this shape. So once I've mixed it, I tend to put it in a bowl that's more that kind of shape, something quite flat. You need some kind of fish slice to get out of the frying pan, whisking tool obviously, but you can use a fork. And this is just for chopping the butter. Now, you may be wondering why I have a pastry cutter and a chopping board. This is because today I'm also going to be showing you how to make another tasty breakfast treat, which you can have for breakfast or lunch or any time of day, quite frankly, because it's just delicious, called egg in the hole. But we'll get on to that in a minute. So in the meantime, go and get all your stuff together, wash your hands, maybe remove your neckies, and I'll see you in a sec. When it comes to cooking the eggy bread, you want your frying pan to be quite hot. So I'm actually going to stick a bit of butter on there now and get it ready heating up whilst I mix my other ingredients together. So just a knob, about a tablespoonful, but you don't probably need all of it in one go. And I'm just going to leave that to melt and to get nice and hot. Okay. And in the meantime, we will crack on with our eggs. Pun intended. First egg. Now, I should tell you that the way to crack open an egg is to tap it on the side of the bowl and then split it open. What you should not do is take the egg and roll it on the counter to get the shell off. Somebody who's not too far away from me just now discovered this the hard way, having seen one of the chefs on children's television doing exactly that, where she was getting the children to roll the eggs on the counter. But what she was doing is she was trying to get them to get the shell off an egg that had already been boiled. So it was nice and hard on the inside. It's not quite so effective if you're using a raw egg. Now the other thing is, if you get a bit of egg shell in the egg and then you try and feed it to me, I may well gag. I really do not like a bit of shell in my food. The best way to get a bit of shell out is to use a bit of shell. It works much better than a spoon. Goodness me, this is such an education today, isn't it? So I'm going to start with 4 eggs because I'm not quite sure how many slices of eggy bread we're going to make here, but we'll work on the assumption we're going to have 4. And I will now, let me just wipe my fingers, put a little splash of milk in here. So I'm just going to freehand it, but basically it's about a tablespoon's worth, slightly slightly more perchance. And then I'm going to use my amazing whisking technique. So this is quite an effective way to beat your eggs if you're using a small receptacle like a narrower jug or such like, but you can obviously use the traditional way. Get it nice and mixed up. Just about that. You can see it's nice and blended. And then I'm going to put it in my flat bowl. And then I will put my bread out. Should probably have had that ready in advance. That would have been helpful. Okay, now, rather than, dipping and carrying, which I feel is a little bit of a high risk strategy, I'm going to take this over to the stove. And naturally, I'm going to give myself a little board to lean on. Just so that I don't have to carry it so far. And dip. Dip. You can leave it to soak for longer, but I don't want mine really soft. I want it to be still reasonably firm. And then kaput. Now you can see straight away that mine is beginning to sizzle because my pan was nice and hot. So I'll start my next one at the same time. Dip, dip, drain off the excess, plonk. Simples. Leave it there for maybe a minute or two. Okay, egg in the hole. So, a little bit of butter, and we just butter our slice of bread on one side. It's not critical that you do this, but it just makes it a bit easier when you're frying it. And the next thing is you take your pastry cutter. You could use a cup if you don't have a pastry cutter, anything that's going to create a reasonable sized hole, and you're now ready for your egg in the hole. You'll have to have an egg to hand, so in actual fact what I might do is just crack that open so that we're all ready to go. And now that we've got that to hand, we will go and check our eggy bread. So I'm just lifting up the side slightly to see whether it's started to go brown, golden brown underneath. It's just beginning to turn now. And then once it has, we can flip it over. I like to use my fish slice, but you can, if you're very brave, just flip the entire pan over. So number one. Mine doesn't look quite so, hasn't changed colour significantly because obviously it was brown bread to start with. If you're using white bread, you might notice more of a change. Some people like to have it quite well done. We quite like ours just lightly fried in this house. So there we have it. Now I'm going to create a bit of space here so I can get my egg in the hole in there, and I will show you what I'm going to do. Butter side down into the pan. Make sure you don't touch the edges. And we will just very gently pour our egg into the hole. Now we'll let that start to cook. Turn down the heat a little bit so that your egg doesn't get overdone. And if you want to, you can actually just burst any bubbles that form using your your fish slice. It just means that it cooks a little bit more evenly. There we go. Now, egg in the hole is something that I have made many, many times, and every time I make it for people, they tell me that they have never seen egg in the hole before. Well, I was actually taught how to make egg in the hole when I lived in Saudi Arabia when I was probably about 10, and I had a 5th grade teacher. I went to an American school who was from Texas, and she taught us on a Bunsen burner at the back of the classroom how to make egg in the hole, and I have been making it and scoffing it ever since. It's particularly tasty with maybe some little crumbly bits of bacon on the top. It's probably not something you would add sweet stuff to, but you're very welcome to. So I might have a slice of egg in the hole and then a slice of eggy bread with icing sugar on it if I'm feeling particularly peckish. Golden brown on both sides. Nice and simple. Maybe just leave that for a second or two longer, and in the meantime we'll put the lid on our egg in the hole. So the lid just goes back on like that, and once it's had a few minutes to cook, we'll flip it over, and Bob is your uncle. My egg in the hole is ready for flipping. So there we go. And I might just give it a slightly gentle push down, but not too hard because I don't want to burst the yolk. And you can see that the egg has cooked through this side and the bread has cooked around the edges as well. So I am very much looking forward to that. I'm going to have a sliced avocado on mine. But other people think that's the devil's food. One way or the other, it's going to be delicious. The final stage of any cooking process is obviously the tidying up. Leaving it in this state is unacceptable, as I'm sure your parents will let you know. So, see if you can beat me, because I am very, very speedy.